Hi everyone, welcome to Thrive Up. In today's episode, we have Amy as our guest. She's a senior product designer at Assent. She has a really cool backstory. Amy kicks things off from art school, Carr University. She has a career in animation before realizing that design was her true jam. So what flipped the switch? And Amy's here to spill the beans. She's going to share her story from art to design and how she landed her very first job as a designer, how she continued to grow in her field. So if you're into design, creativity, or love a good career story, stick around.
I do really love to be proven wrong because I find that if I'm just going to be designing things that are always right, that's not really fun to me. So how can you start bringing problems up by yourself, continuously doing discovery and finding the next work to do, rather than having a top-down telling you, hey, this is your next project?
Hey Amy,
Hello, Annie.
can you give us a short introduction?
Yeah, my name is Amy. I am currently a senior product designer at Assent. I've been a designer for around 5 years now, and I started from a smaller startup. I've seen a lot of transformations happen throughout my career, and yeah, I'm just currently at Assent right now.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your education and how did your school prepare you as a designer?
I came from art school, Carr University, and funny thing is I actually always wanted to be in animation, and at a certain point at Carr I realized that animation wasn't right for me, but also in art school I realized that open interpretation, which is what art is all about, wasn't for me either. And I remember seeing one of my friend's projects in design at the time. She was working on a project where it was about solving the problem of too many plugs and outlets, and I was just so inspired by that project. I was like, I think I'm gonna transfer into design. I think design is what I wanted to do.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you find that super interesting.
I really like the idea of taking a problem and pushing forward, moving that problem into the solution phase, and then being able to create an impact with the solution from the original problem. The one thing that Carr did a very good job on was really focused on user research and to understand the user needs, such as interviewing, creating like journey maps, empathy maps, user flows to understand what it is that the user actually needs, and they really focused less on the like create Figma, here's how you use Figma, here is like how you make wireframes and stuff. And because of that, I realized I am a lot better with discovery, understanding the problem, and user research than I am with the actual like design things.
That's so cool. Now, how do you start your design journey? How do you find your first design job?
How I started my design journey, it was actually really difficult. I found that getting a job in design was actually extremely hard. But what I did realize was that every time I went into like a professional networking event, or when I was able to speak with people in the industry, I realized that I would learn a lot out of it. I would take a lot of takeaways, and I would meet like really cool new people. And I was able to make good connections with my professors. Through that, I was able to get like design positions in the school. I met one of my professors, like he was in charge of the Design for Startup kind of program, and I applied for Design for Startup, and I was connected with another startup. I was lucky that because I had the connections with my professors directly, they see the work I do in class, they see that I ask questions during class, I really engage during class, they see the things I put out, and because of that, they know who I am as a person, and they know the work I do, and I think I kind of got my proof of validation through that. That's how I pretty much got my first design industry job, and they just kept me after I graduated, and that's how I kind of moved forward with my design career. Yeah.
I'm so curious. So what do you do in your daily job as a designer?
My day-to-day really depends on which stage of the project I am in. There are certain days where I am doing research. I am trying to understand what the user needs, how the user is doing something. There's some days then I would move to, really ideation, sketching different ideas, validating, testing, higher fidelity work, actual design polish, handout. At every stage, you're doing something completely different. So a day-to-day is a little hard to answer, to be honest. It's more like which phase of a project are you on? And I think that's what I actually do like about design. I'm never doing the same thing over and over again. I actually get to see something from beginning to end. I get to change up what I'm doing, and it never gets boring. Yeah.
What do you think the most interesting part of your daily job?
My most interesting day, it would definitely be just talking with actual users and customers and looking into data to understand why something is the case, or just understanding where their thought processes, where their learning processes, and how do they want to use it. I find that I learn a lot that way, and I just really enjoy learning multiple point of views.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Then I wonder, are there any challenges in this journey that you transit to design and start your job as a designer?
Yes. In my very early stage, I worked at a startup, and my first company, there was really no direction or no leadership available, and we were just swimming in nowhere. And for me, it was just about me trying to find my own way as a designer. How can I provide value in ways outside of design? Later, I was able to get a role with more a leadership and more of a guidance, but we were still very much pivot every minute, move very fast. There was really no guidance for me in my career in the beginning with a design mentor. It was really me figuring it out on my own with the skills I've been teaching in school, how to provide value as a designer. I think that was really the part I struggled the most with. Other than that, I have a Medium article called How I Went from a Design Punching Bag to Lead Designer. I really struggle working with my cross-functional people, stakeholders as well. I really struggle taking feedback from others. I was like, hey, if I just listen to them, that'd be all good, right? But no, it's not just about listening to your stakeholders and doing what they're telling you to do. It's really about how can I incorporate design and user experience together with the tech considerations as well as the business needs.
Now, how do you know that you want to work at startups?
Yeah, this is a great question. And for me, I just have a lot of fun at startups because they're very small teams you work with, and you iterate, you make an impact a lot faster than at bigger companies. I like startups because I just know whatever I do has a huge impact both to my users, to the customer base, but also to the internal team I'm working with. And it's not just about cross-functional collaboration. It's about hey, understanding how we can improve processes, just growing and seeing the transformation going from a small team to a bigger team is just a lot of fun to go through all that. Yeah. So that's what makes me like a startup. You just move faster. You're a lot closer to the company and strategy. You get to understand why company level decisions are being made and why they have certain strategies the way they do, and they communicate very closely with you. And I was just able to learn so much because of that. I realized after I left that startup, I kind of lost all of that communication from leadership level and understanding the company strategy, understanding the company's position. Because of that, I prefer startups better because I'm really able to kind of prove, hey, this is how design is able to provide value, but in way more ways to the business than you might think. And to do that at a bigger company, it's an uphill battle.
How about your future career choice and career interview?
If I am going to be very honest, I am not one of those people who struggle with interviewing. And that is because I treat it as a conversation for me to understand the other person's point of view or what they're looking for. While there are case studies and I do answer questions, and that sometimes is a little nerve-wracking, But overall, I actually find interviewing very interesting. Before the interview, I do a lot of research about the company beforehand. So I really look into their Glassdoor, I look at what their job posting is looking for, and I come up with like a list of questions that I have about that company and what exactly is the role they're looking for. For example, one of my first questions why are you hiring? Why are you looking to hire for someone right now? Is it to replace someone? Is it to expand and grow? Did a lot of people quit at once? What's the reason for it? Are they trying to validate a new idea? And from there, what are the current challenges they're going through? What are they looking for in a successful designer? I asked all these questions, and it's almost like I'm having a back and forth conversation between me and the hiring manager.
I see. So you treat it as an opportunity to get to know the company better, get to know the people you're going to work with better.
Yes, and it's not just for that reason, right? Interviewing really is like, dating. They say treat it like dating, and they're really right. It's not just about knowing me, getting to know them better. It's also understanding, are they the right fit for me? And I'm lucky I kind of really know what it is I'm looking for at the moment, so I know things to look out for or potential red flags that is going to scream, I don't want to work here for me.
Yeah.
And getting to know them, identifying red flags, and having that conversation just really takes the nerve off me.
You suggest to reach out to hiring manager and get to know more about the role, know
Yes.
more about the position.
Yeah.
It's a way of networking.
Yes, but also, give them a little tease about how you're fit for the role with real examples.
It's also an opportunity for you to advertise yourself and at the same time get to know more about the position.
Yes.
My question is, someone is completely new to this industry, completely new to the UX role, and they want to get their first job. How do they prepare?
I think school experiences, school project is still completely relevant. And if you never really went through formal school training, but you have good sense of user research, you play with Figma on your free time and you know how to use it, just start creating personal projects to build up that portfolio, starting with, hey, what is the problem that I see today or that I find, and how did I talk with people, or how I learned more about the users within that space, and how did I create a solution that helped these people, right? Starting from a problem to a solution, just whatever you're passionate about, make a portfolio on that subject. I realized the more passionate I am about a subject, the easier it is for me to really understand that space and create a solution for it within the design realm. So that's the first advice. But in terms of project, I'm really looking for how to get started is, I would say, just network and get yourself in the community and talk with people who are in the industry and ask them what it is they're looking for.
Like how you talk to the hiring manager when you're trying to get to learn more about the position.
Yeah, send them a LinkedIn DM message, and when you introduce yourself, you want to make yourself stand out in a way. For me, when I post job postings out, I get a lot of hey, can you refer me please? And I'm like, well, I know nothing about you. I know nothing about your skill set other than your name. I see you have a resume here, but what does that actually show me about you? So take the effort to actually try and book a coffee call. Even if the hiring manager doesn't have time for you, maybe people who work in the team. Yeah, people who work in the team, they might be happy to speak with you. Try to reach out to them and ask hey, why are you hiring? What does a successful candidate look like? What are some challenges the team is currently going through? How does the team collaborate with the developers and the PMs? Tell me how the project comes to the team and how do you guys take it to launch? All these questions, for me, it's hey, will really give you insights when you ask about first of all about the company and the role and the position, but it's going to tell the other side oh, this person is really serious and really interested in the role. Yeah,
that's a really good point. In your experience, I noticed that you're at different companies, right? I wonder, do you develop different types of skill set at different companies?
Yes. For me, I primarily worked in startups, and I think the skill sets that I really had to adapt to was just leadership skills as a designer for myself to lead a project through from beginning to end, because in a more smaller startup you could be one of the only designer or you could be one of the only two designers. You have a small design team and you won't have that same design mentorship as a big company does. So for me, leadership was a skill I had to really learn early on so I can lead project from a design point of view from beginning to end. That's probably the number one skill I had to really learn. Otherwise, if there's other skills, like some companies are going to value user research more than other places are, or they're going to see research differently. And some places might require you to do research, some places might not. And some places might really require you to have that extreme level of polish with UI, and some places will not. So your skill sets will vary based on the company itself, and there are specialists that are like in both research and user interface. However, I would say I'm more of like a generalist who specializes in both.
I see. If someone who is interested in to be a designer in general, how do you suggest them? Like what skill sets do you suggest them to develop, and how do you suggest them to prepare for the industry?
Okay, the actual skill sets, like know how to do interviews, know how to do user research, learn how to use Figma, but that's all like you can find that if you do Google online or you ask ChatGPT. I would say like have some soft skills where it's about staying curious. Do not have an ego and be ready to fail and challenge your own assumptions, because the fun part about user research and design to me is that I get to test it and validate it with others. I get to be proven wrong. I'm proven wrong a lot of times where I get to learn something new. So staying curious and always listening to your users' feedback and what they're saying, why something is working out or why something isn't, is probably the most important part to being a designer, because the only way you're going to make a better experience for someone is if you listen to their feedback and not validate your own assumptions.
How about the leadership you mentioned? How do you grow your people skill, your leadership skill along the way?
Leadership is not just about focusing on the work I do as a designer. I could just focus on my design work and the UI work and not really work with the business and my engineering counterparts. But when I say I focus on leadership as a skill, it's really about me taking that step outside of design and really working with engineering and the PMs to not just talk about, hey, what are the design requirements, but what is actually the goal of our project? What is the problem we're solving? And how is the solution going to make impact to them? And really taking one level step up to ensure that everyone who's on the project actually has the same level of understanding. Because at the end of the day, when a team lacks like the leadership guidance and not everyone is aligned to what the project is about, what the goal is about, what is exactly we're doing and how we're doing it, chances are you as a designer is going to be impacted as well, because you don't really know what you're designing for. You don't know how you're going to be designing for it. And you might try just listen to someone else and make something wrong. You might going down that wrong direction, and then 3 months later you realize you have to start all over again. And so it's really about taking that step to ensure everyone knows what's going on, everyone is on the same page. For me, I see it so my life as a designer is easier, but also you realize, your cross-functional stakeholders like product management and engineering will also really appreciate you for the fact that you're taking the effort to really understand what's going on. And let's say if the problem isn't clear, or let's say if what we're looking for isn't clear, or the next steps are not very clear on what we need to do, if there's going to be like discovery or validation that's needed to unblock the team, then I will just take the lead and go reach out to people to find out how to get the information that the team needs so we can push things forward. Yeah.
So you show the ownership and responsibility, and then you do it without being told to.
I think that's a good word to put it. I take extreme ownership. Yes.
So
yeah.
You mentioned that you're also offer mentorship to
Yes.
people. So can you tell me more about that part?
Yeah, every once in a while, I will see junior designers who are trying to get into their first role or who really need help with either practicing for interview case studies or they just need resume review. If they ask the help, I will always try and go help someone because I wish I had someone like that when I was a junior designer. And so when there's people who are asking for help, I really try to do my best to help them out because I really know that feeling. Yeah, so I do a lot from just giving people advice on how to do a better case study, how to tell the story better for their case study, and yeah, just like good strategies on what the internal hiring process is like.
How do your mentee get to know you and connect with you?
That's a great question. Let's see. One of them I recently met at DevFest, and she just reached out to me. She saw that I was like a designer, and then she was really interested in connecting with me, and I was like, great. You know, like, that's awesome, right? You're putting yourself out there, you're trying your best, and you're doing the effort. So I think it's really important for me to acknowledge that and help out when I can. Other ones, some post on the Vancouver Design Slack channel, check-in Slack channel, and I see a post time to time like asking for help. Some like I do respond to those at times and I help. Or I think just like people I meet just at workplaces or who might be affected by layoffs or are trying to find a new position and they are struggling to do so. I'm like, hey, I can try and help review your resume and portfolio to see what can be improved there. Yeah.
Usually, how do you help them with their portfolio?
Portfolios are a tricky one, to be honest, because today a lot of the portfolios have almost like a standard format. So to a certain extent, if I were a hiring manager and if I were to scroll through a portfolio in like 3 to 5 seconds, I would just be looking through the same thing, right? It'd be like, hey, does it have like interface pictures? Does it have like user flows, diagrams, user research personas, low fidelity, high fidelity? It's almost the same thing I'm looking for to a certain extent. And then I actually get reading. When I'm actually reading through a portfolio, then I'm like, hey, do I see a clear problem statement? That's always the first thing I look for. What is the problem you're trying to solve right now? If I don't see a clear problem statement, that's always the first thing I give them feedback on. I don't really understand what the goal of the project is because I don't know what the problem is. Other than that, I would say focus more on the outcomes and the impact of your discovery, your work, rather than the process you did. So instead of saying we did user research and then we spoke with 5 people, just say 42% of users could not find where this button was, or 43% of people did not understand how to accomplish this goal because of XYZ.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for, not, then we spoke with people. I'm glad you spoke with people, but I want to know like what you learned out of that.
I see. I remember you mentioned that it's extremely competitive for especially junior designer role. Any suggestion to help people?
Networking, ask people on LinkedIn, try to start conversations on LinkedIn rather than just cold applying. For junior roles, junior intermediate roles, it's especially hard because everyone is going for them. They're getting so many different applications, and like I said, today all the portfolios have all of a standard format. If they're all in a certain format and they are all looking somewhat of the same, it's really hard to gauge the skill level of each person. So when I say, hey, ask, like, network and put people on coffee chats, that way the professional is really getting to know you better. They can see how you communicate, they can see your personality, and they can also see you're really putting an effort into this, right? It just saves a lot of time for the hiring team. Instead of going through all that noise of like 1,000 applications to be like, well, I know that person already have certain soft skill sets, let's just evaluate them. Like, we're still going to evaluate them, but it's going to be a lot more of a qualified person than, a lot of these resume applications, we have no idea how they are. Which brings on my next point, ask for referrals if possible, because referrals will put your application on the top. But don't just like blindly ask for referrals. Maybe put them on a coffee chat, right? Like, I'm really interested in learning more about the role, and actually ask questions more about the role, and then the other side will sometimes, if they're really nice, they will tell you whether you're the right fit or not. There's been times as a junior where they're like, hey, we're actually looking for someone more intermediate, like senior. I don't think you're the right fit. And that's fine. But it's also like, hey, what is it that I did that wasn't the right fit? Like, tell me how I can be better. Tell me how I could improve. Tell me what I need to work on. And that way you're at least like maybe putting them on the spot to actually understand how you can improve.
It's a really great suggestion by asking feedback on how they can improve so that they can fill their gap.
Yeah, I actually asked that during the interview as well. Sometimes at the end of the interview, I'm actually straight up like, hey, was there anything I could have done better for today? And if they say I'm doing great, I did great, chances are, actually it happens on most of the time, I actually move to the next stage of the interview without the actual hiring recruiter telling me I move it to the next stage. I just kind of like get that internal feedback early on, right after interview.
That's great.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit more about the journey, how you grow from junior designer to where you are right now?
Yeah, so as a junior designer, I did not know how to work with other people. I was also afraid to speak up. I just wanted to like do my own work and do what I was told. And through a lot of feedback from my manager at the time, for me to really level up, I will have to take more like on leadership as a skill. So I will have to speak up when needed, like speak up and then take the lead of the project, identify whatever needs to be, what areas of opportunities there are, how I can improve, and just improve as we go. Yeah, don't be afraid to give others feedback. And then specifically for hard skills within the more senior realm is like, how do you measure your impact as a designer, and how can you start bringing problems up to the manager and the team without your lead or manager telling you what to do? So how can you start bringing problems up by yourself, continuously doing discovery and finding the next work to do, rather than having a top-down telling you, hey, this is your next project. And I want to say, like, I didn't just grow to this stage by myself. I also had mentors who taught me, hey, you need to focus on this more. You need to learn how to measure your work. You need to understand how to continuously do discovery. Or I had others who did that. I saw my peers who was like, hey, I know we've been all going through this problem lately, and here's a solution I wanted to propose to the team. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. You just proposed the solution of like that we've been all going through. And I saw other people lead by example. For me, when I see other people do something better than I do it, I just learn how they do it. I just study what they did, and I start doing it myself because I'm very inspired by them. And I think having that mentorship just by others leading by example, I was really able to like start practicing that, and that's how I kind of got to where I am today.
Previously you mentioned that interview is a two-way interview. Like you use this opportunity to get to know more about the job, people you're working with, and I also know that you're working at different company before. So when you're looking for a job, when you have those coffee chat with hiring manager, what are you looking for in the new role?
What am I looking for? Ooh, that's a great question. For me, because I came from a scaling startup, I am specifically looking for something where it's not as established or there's opportunity for more room to grow. So some level of, hey, the team is there, the process is there, but it's not perfect. Not everything is perfect, and the team clearly knows there's rooms like either measuring the impact of their design or some user research needs or understanding the domain space better. Like, I'm just really trying to understand what exactly is the team missing right now, and how can my experience really be applied to the skill sets the team is missing. That's the number one thing I'm always looking for. What is the team missing, and how can my experience be applicable to that one? I'm also trying to look for if there's any egos in the team, because for me, it's very important that a designer or the design team I'm working with is willing to admit when they are wrong, when their assumption was wrong, and then they learned and they were able to iterate. I personally really dislike very high ego workplace, so that's also like one of the important things I'm looking for. And to me, that's a red flag. I don't want to work with a lot of people with big egos. I want to work with people who are genuinely wanting to make an impact on the user. I'm also looking for how do they collaborate with their stakeholders? How do they work for the developers and the PMs? And this is where you can see the dynamic really change. Is it like a developer-run company? Is it a product-run company? Is it a design-run company? For the most part, I've seen more product-run companies. So I'm really trying to understand the dynamic and how the collaboration works, who is like the decision maker, how the team actually collaborates with each other. So that's also extremely important, because at the end of the day, chances are I'm working with a developer and the PM on a project, then I'm working with 10 different designers on a project. So that's the top 3 things I work for. And then the other things like, hey, tell me about your domain space, which often not I don't have a lot of experience, because in B2B you could be in any domain space out there, and I often don't have as much to add on to a domain space. But also, like, is there anything happening within the company right now? Some are going through a product like growth transformation, or some are trying to scale. So my current one is like kind of doing scaling at the moment. Yeah, my previous one was like doing product like growth transformations, and there's a lot of different things that a company is looking for. And I'm just trying to understand, like, hey, is this something I have experience doing? But also understand where the company is at, and how I meet those needs. Yeah.
I see. Another question I'm very curious is, what happens if you have conflict with developer or product people?
I think this is where everyone just might define conflict a little bit differently. I try to not see conflicts as conflicts. I just see them as like, they don't necessarily agree with my point of view. For me, I really like to understand where they're coming from, and I really like to understand why. So I have a conversation with them like, hey, you want to explain your point of view with me more and tell me where you're coming from. And this doesn't mean I have to agree with them, right? But at the end of the day, the project has a goal. It has the impact we're trying to make, and it has like business needs. And when I understand where they're coming from more, it's a lot easier for both of us to make a decisions, because I'm also telling them where I'm coming from. And then we're like, why don't we try to brainstorm maybe other ideas, other design solutions, other considerations to make when coming down to this. And it really helps us together make a decision better when we both understand where we're coming from and the goals that we're trying to achieve. And which is why I also do enjoy working with people who do have their own opinions about, hey, this is the way it should be. Not because I'm just going to listen to them, but because they're proposing, if they do disagree with me, they're also proposing alternative ways of getting somewhere. It's really nice when others challenge me on my designs at certain times, because I'm learning new things every day too. I'm not perfect. A lot of design is really to get feedback from my stakeholders as well as users to make things better, right? At the end of the day, it's about usability and what it means to the business and the users.
How do you keep being motivated as a designer?
It's interesting because I actually get motivated by having someone completely like debunk my assumptions. So if I have certain assumptions and someone completely debunks it, and I'm talking about actual users, I actually get motivated because I'm like, oh my god, I was so wrong, like tell me more.
Wow.
I do really love to be proven wrong, because I find that if I'm just going to be designing things that are always right, that's not really fun to me, I guess. For me, I really just want to learn more things and learn how I can be consistently innovating and making something better. So if someone just tells me, oh, this is good, I'm like,
it's boring.
I'm kind of bored through that, but I'm like, okay, you saved me less work.
I can see you're really open-minded, and then you, instead of seeing things as conflict or you're making mistake, you're seeing those as opportunity to grow. See. Anything you want to share at the very end?
Is this like in general or design specific?
So people who are interested in become a designer and also looking to have a career here, and then what advice would you offer to them so that they can better grow as a designer in their career?
Stay open-minded. Join hackathons, actually. Join hackathons. Join hackathons, yeah.
Even they have a full-time job?
I think there's nothing wrong to join hackathons even if you have a full-time job. But that said, if you have a family or if you have commitments, it's a lot harder for you to join like a 24-hour hackathons, right? I mean, I don't think hackathon is limited by age, to be honest. Just network, grow your network, or you know what? The tech community specifically in Vancouver is actually very small, so it's important, don't burn any bridges throughout your career. Like, your network is the number one valuable thing to you. Like, an example is even, when you want to quit professionally, even if your workplace is toxic and crappy and you hate it, just still be professional about it, because you never know where that other person might be down the road and how small the community really is. Yeah.
You mentioned quite a lot about networking, and I can see this is quite important for people to get their job, get their first job and get a new job. So what advice you have to people to maintain their network?
If you're already in this industry and you want to take your next step, why don't you try speaking more often, or mentoring at, like, volunteering at conferences, attending conferences, meeting new people. Conferences is a great way to like meet people who are in the same industry or job as you. And that's where you can meet like-minded people. Maintaining it, chances are, like, from what I see, if you're in this industry, you're gonna meet the people in your network at one event or another. You just see them and you get to just reconnect with them every once in a while. Thank you.
I guess that's the end of the interview.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you everyone for joining me on Thrive Up today. You can find our podcast on thriveup.co, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. We also have a weekly newsletter that shares tips for career growth and summary for things we've mentioned in the podcast. You can also find my contact information on the website. So looking forward to hearing your thoughts, and have a good week, everyone.